Peace and respect to you all. Welcome to Demolished Doctrines series, Teach Me Everyday Logic and Argumentation, featuring Halcyonic Kaiju. Halcyonic.
Hey, everybody.
You said you didn't really have anything you wanted to shill. Okay, so I understand that we are human beings, and we are not purely logical, although we use logic in everyday life. Learning logic actually helps a person's mind operate more efficiently and waste less energy, which is amazing. And it can do things like save you money or save you frustration. I'm going to give a quick story where that happened in real time for me and one of my employers. My employer, hardworking woman in the educational system in New Mexico, is supporting her grandbabies. Her daughter died, and the dad is a deadbeat dad. He's never around. So you got grandma raising two grandsons, and they're teenagers. I'm saying between what she owes me and trying to take care of those boys and pay mortgage and stuff, she doesn't have a lot of extra money to work with. But she did manage to get a large enough loan to buy a small second property, which already had a well on it, but the well had not been proved. That is, this was an old man's dream, and he got cancer, and he never finished it, and she picked it up cheap. So she cut a check to a company that said that they could test the well to see that it pumps water. And then the check was, I think the total was supposed to be $800 estimated beforehand. So they report back to her after a couple weeks, and they say, the coils in the pump, that is the resistance on that length of wire and in the coils in the motor in the pump, tested fine. It was exactly what the resistance should be. And she was all happy, and she came to me and she said, hey, the coils are good. I said, okay, does it pump water? And she said, no, well, I don't know. I said, well, I thought you hired somebody. She says, I did. I said, but they didn't report back that it pumps water. And so I was like, okay, can you put me on the phone with these people? I get on the phone with the office manager, and I referred to them what case I was talking about, etc. And using proper names and stuff. And I said, so you guys reported the following, the resistance is correct. And she said, yes. And I said, does that tell us if the pump is working? Because the motor might not even be attached to the pump, or the pump could be frozen up, or the pipe could be rusted through. So does that answer the question that she paid you to answer? And the woman goes, well, no, it doesn't. I said, so you've been paid for a job you didn't do. Is that correct? She says, well, yeah. I said, so she's going to be canceling that check, and you're not going to object, right? And she said, well, yeah, I understand. No problems. $800, 3 minutes. That's what logic will do for you. Okay, so I'm going to throw the floor at Halsey and let Halsey take this first section. Halsey, did you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, just a little tiny bit. I think before I took any classes on logic, I really didn't have a clear idea of what it even was. And, the good news is that it does mean some very specific things that help you think correctly and reason correctly, which is, it's odd to think that there are definitely correct ways to reason, and once you know what they are, they can be very useful. And this is part of that. And so, let's clear away the vague ideas about logic and get specific.
Right on.
Yeah. All right. So I have my screen over here that I'm gonna roll up. Should I present it so that I can?
Would you please? That way you can control it.
Okay. All right. There we go. So this is a very short first section, And this is, by the way, this is from a University of Massachusetts, right? This document you found, basic.
Yeah, I believe it was University of
Massachusetts. Concepts of
yeah.
logic. All right,
Sure.
so first little section here. What is logic? Logic may be defined as the science of reasoning. However, this is not to suggest that logic is an empirical, i.e. experimental or observational science like physics, biology, or physiology, or I'm sorry, psychology. Rather, logic is a non-empirical science like mathematics. Also, in saying that logic is the science of reasoning, we do not mean that it is concerned with the actual mental or physical process employed by a thinking entity when it is reasoning. The investigation of the actual reasoning process falls more appropriately within the province of psychology, neurophysiology, or cybernetics. Even if these empirical disciplines were considerably more advanced than they presently are, the most they could disclose in the exact process that goes on in a being's head when he or she or it is reasoning. They could not, however, tell us whether the being is reasoning correctly or incorrectly. Distinguishing correct reasoning from incorrect reasoning is the task of logic. You want to go with number 2?
I'd love to. Be honored.
Okay.
Can you control plus that?
Sure.
Thank you.
Much better.
Oh, great. I'm getting old, Housey. Inferences and arguments. Reasoning is a special mental activity called inferring. What can also be called making or performing inferences. The following is a useful and simple definition of the word infer. To infer is to draw conclusions from premises. In place of the word premises, you could also put data, information, or facts. Here's some examples of inferences. You see smoke and infer that there is a fire. You count 19 persons in a group that originally had 20, and you infer that someone is missing. I would need you to scroll up about 50%. Note carefully the difference between infer and imply, which are sometimes confused. We infer the fire on the basis of the smoke, but we do not imply the fire. On the other hand, the smoke implies the fire, but does not infer the fire. The word infer is not equivalent to the word imply, nor is it equivalent to insinuate. So we're using the word infer quite purposefully, and that's a standard word to be used here, and I think that's the overarching point of that. The reasoning process may be thought of as beginning with an input, premises, data, etc., and producing an output, or conclusions. In each specific case of inferring a conclusion called C, so C from now on, just think of that as indicative of the conclusion, from premises such as P1, P2, or P3, which would stand for premise 1, premise 2, and premise 3. The details of the actual mental process, that is to say, in your mind, how your gears work, is not the proper concern of logic, but of psychology and neurophysiology. The proper concern of logic is whether the inference of C on the basis of P1, P2, P3 is warranted or correct. Inferences are made on the basis of various sorts of things: data, facts, information, states of affairs. In order to simplify the investigation of reasoning logic, I'm sorry, they had a break right there and it doesn't belong there. Okay. Can you scroll down just a little bit so I can read I can see the last of that, so I can read that properly? Okay, so I can actually see what I just lost. What I lost, not what the future. Yeah. So I can read that, because that chapter 1, basic concepts, page 3 threw me off. That shouldn't be there in my brain. I'm sure it's fine, but it shouldn't have been there in my reasoning and logic. So I'm going to read that again. In order to simplify the investigation of reasoning, logic treats all of these things in terms of a single sort of thing, that is, statements. Logic, correspondingly, treats inferences in terms of collections of statements, which are called arguments. The word argument has a number of meanings in ordinary English. The definition of argument that is relevant to the logic is given as follows. If you want to scroll up, that would be fine. An argument is a collection of statements, one of which is designated as the conclusion, and the remainder of which are designated as premises. I personally would have liked it better if they put the premises first, because normally in a structured argument, the premises would come first. Yeah. In sentential logic, it could be written differently, but in classical syllogism, it would not be. So I'm going to read that the other way around. An argument is a collection of statements, the bulk of which will be the premises, and then the ending will be the conclusion. Would you like to take over reading a moment?
Sure. Note that this is not a definition of a good argument. Also note that in the context of ordinary discourse, an argument has an additional trait described as follows. Usually the premises of an argument are intended to support or justify the conclusion of the argument. Before giving some concrete examples of arguments, it might be best to clarify a term in the definition. The word statement is intended to mean declarative sentence. In addition to declarative sentences, there are also interrogative, imperative, and exclamatory sentences. The sentences that make up an argument are all declarative sentences. That is, they are all statements. The following may be taken as the official definition of statement. A statement is a declarative sentence, which to say a sentence that is capable of being true or false. The following are examples of statements. It is raining. I am hungry. 2 + 2 = 4. God exists. On the other hand, the following of the examples of sentences are not statements. Are you hungry? Shut the door, please. And a bunch of profanity. God damn it.
I want to ask some questions about this.
Okay.
Okay, so the first set of examples there are statements. It is raining. I am hungry. 2 + 2 = 4. And God exists. Now, if I'm understanding this correctly, it's because these have a true or false value. That is, they could be falsified. They could be judged. Whereas
they can either be true or false, yeah.
They can be true or false. That's each one of them have a value of either true or false.
Right. It declares something, and it's a something that is either true or false. Okay. Yeah, I know, but we're just clarifying. And then anything else?
Yeah, and then the second set of examples, are you hungry is a question. So right. Are you hungry wouldn't have a true false value. Neither would shut the door, please, because that's just requesting something.
Right.
And frackin' snackin' friggerackin' schnickin' reckin' rabbit obviously doesn't have a true or false value, because it's just how someone feels about a thing.
Right. So this is they had the names for these. This is like a interrogative, right? Interrogative, the question, the imperative, the command, and the exclamatory. Is that right? Exclamatory? Yeah, exclamatory. Observe that whereas a statement is capable of being true or false, a question or a command or an exclamation is not capable of being true or false. Note that in saying that a statement is capable of being true or false, we are not saying that we know for sure which of the two, true or false, it is. Thus, for a sentence to be a statement, it is not necessary that humankind knows for sure whether it is true or whether it is false. An example is the statement, God exists. Okay, now let us get back to inferences and arguments. Earlier, we discussed 2 examples of inferences. Let us see how these can be represented as arguments. In the case of the smoke-fire inference, the corresponding argument is given as follows. There is smoke, therefore there is fire. So this is the premise and the conclusion. Here the argument consists of 2 statements. There is smoke and there is fire. The term therefore is not strictly speaking is not strictly speaking part of the argument. It rather serves to designate the conclusion. There is fire, setting it off from the premise. There is smoke. In this argument, there is just one premise. In the case of the missing person inference, the corresponding argument is given as follows. There were 20 persons originally. There are 19 persons currently. Therefore, someone is missing. Here, the argument consists of 3 statements. There were 20 persons originally, there are 19 persons currently, and someone is missing. Once again, therefore, sets off the conclusion from the premises. In principle, any collection of statements can be treated as an argument simply by designating which statement in particular is the conclusion. However, not every collection of statements is intended to be an argument. We accordingly need criteria by which to distinguish arguments from other collections of statements. There are no hard and fast rules for telling when a collection of statements is intended to be an argument, but there are a few rules of thumb. Often an argument can be identified as such because its conclusion is marked. We have already seen one conclusion marker, the word therefore. Besides therefore, there are other words that are commonly used to mark conclusions of arguments, including consequently, hence, thus, so, and ergo. Usually such words indicate that what follows is the conclusion of an argument. Other times an argument can be identified as such because its premises are marked. Words that are used for this purpose include for, because, and since. For example, using the word for, the smoke fire argument earlier can be rephrased as follows. There is fire, for there is smoke. Note that in A1, the conclusion comes before the premise. Other times, neither the conclusion nor the premises of an argument are marked, so it is harder to tell that the collection of statements is intended to be an argument. A general rule of thumb applies in this case as well as in previous cases.
I'd like to review a little bit of something there.
Okay.
Okay, so that first list of markers of conclusions.
Yes.
Although we do have one, I think that's a Latin term, ergo.
Mm-hmm.
Yes? Yeah.
I think so.
Although we do have one Latin term there. The rest of those terms are just different ways of saying, and it follows. Consequently,
yes.
Hence, thus. That just means that something follows. So it's claiming in whoever wrote it is claiming that the conclusion does follow from the premises, and this is the part that follows, thereby it's the conclusion.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And sometimes, like I've seen in some instances where you might read a collection of statements and, they definitely aren't necessarily always in order where the conclusion is last. Sometimes the conclusion will be stated first, and then someone will follow it up with the premises, in an attempt to support what they just said.
And now that he's no longer AFK,
mm-hmm. See here,
peace and respect, Cerberus Hex. And would you join in and take some? Your microphone sounds good. Would you take some turns reading in, so I could go and have a cigarette because I cannot smoke in this building?
I'll turn off all my work here. I suppose I could. I was gonna. I've been here for actually a little while, but I was gonna add something to what you just said, Richard.
You are more than welcome. The floor is yours.
The way it was explained to me is that anything that implies from those to this.
From these this essentially, yeah. Or from those this.
That sounds good.
I like that. Yeah. All right, so let's see where we are. We're at the very end of section number 2. How about if I'll just finish up this little tiny bit here, and if you want to, if you feel like it, you could start with 3. Okay. Or what do you want, sir? You could have some now or later. It's up to you.
You either have input or I kick you. You make up your mind.
Oh, I'll read. I have a ton of input.
Work for your demand.
I don't know.
I don't
know if the input I have is appropriate for what we're doing, though.
Well, if it's on topic.
If it's on topic and it's worth mentioning, I'll make notes of what you say.
Oh, okay.
If it's if it's that good.
Let me actually.
Actually.
I have the.
But first, let her read the ending of 2.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll finish up with 2, and then we'll get your notes. In an argument, the premises are intended to support or justify the conclusion. To state things somewhat differently, when a person, speaking or writing, advances an argument, he or she expresses a statement he or she believes to be true. The conclusion, and he or she cites other statements as a reason for believing that statement, the premises. All right. So, Serb, what's up with your additions? What would you like to add? And do you need me to roll through any of this to? Oh
no, that's actually why I brought it up on the side, so I can look at it.
Okay. Okay. Cool.
I don't want to add anything we haven't gotten to yet.
Okay.
Okay. Let's go from soonest. So declarative statements don't have to be true and false.
Can you give an example?
This sentence is false.
Well, they covered that. Well, actually, okay. So that is potentially what could be called like a paradox, right?
Yeah.
Where if it's false, then it's true. If it's true, then it's false, right?
Yeah, it's a statement that can't have a truth value.
Right. Really. And I just actually was exposed to the idea of paradoxes in logic earlier tonight. And I'm not sure this goes into it because I haven't gone that far yet. But that was a special kind of declarative statement that, yeah, they said can complicate things. And so you're right. Not every declarative statement is, can be truth or falsified. So.
And okay, there's one other thing for so far that technically
Okay.
How do I want to put it? Being like a basic text,
mm-hmm.
As you move on to advanced text, you're going to end up having to unlearn half of this.
Okay.
But that's the case for all basic text. You learn that model of the atom inside elementary school, and we all know that model isn't true.
Right. I think it's just to introduce the concept. Sometimes it takes certain ways of introducing it, and then okay. I have no idea how far I'll go into advanced or intermediate or whatever. I took a class that probably only covered the basics, to be honest. It was like a combo class of like logic and critical thinking. We got into some symbolic logic and like truth tables and all of the different meanings of all the connectors and how to put them together and everything. And I think that's as far as it went in the class that I took.
Yeah. I think that was a preference. I can't even say the word. That was to set up this, and I think this is where some people get confused when they first make their real attempt to try to understand this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Logic is a set of rules for thinking,
mm-hmm.
right? Stuff like deduction and induction and abduction and analogy. That's
mm-hmm.
reasonings, and then arguments are forms that are created with reasonings, which are then created by rules of thinking.
That might be worth writing down what you just said. At first you said logic is a set of rules for thinking, right?
Yeah, you can say for thought. It just sounds better, I think. Rules for thought.
Rules for thought. Okay, and then you said.
And then reasoning, like deductive and abductive and inductive, those are created with logic. And they give you can then deduce from those the valid forms of arguments for those types of reasoning. Like you can go look up.
I want to quote you. I want to quote you directly on this. So I just put reasoning and then in parentheses inductive, deductive, abductive, and then you said it's created using logic. Is that what you said?
Yes, use logic to just build those, figure those out.
Okay.
and then from there you can figure out all the valid forms of those, all valid forms for arguments using that type of reasoning.
Okay. So another thing to note, it doesn't really have to do a lot with this, first part of logic that we're dealing with is we've gone through in another session a bunch of informal fallacies, but we never touched yet, I don't think, on formal ones. And I'm kind of gearing up for that in a future session, but that ought to be fun. Okay. So far I've just got two things noted. Logic is a set of rules for thinking/thought, and reasoning is created/utilized with logic. Is that accurate?
I would say just created with.
Just created? Okay.
Yeah.
And was there anything else that you said?
And from reasoning, because it's like a river. You got upstream and downstream, and then from reasoning, you can figure out all the valid forms of arguments using that reasoning.
Okay. You say from reasoning you could figure out all the valid forms of arguments?
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, we went a little bit into validity, truth, validity, and soundness last night with Von Erich. We went through like some information and then a quiz and spent some time reviewing that. It was a lot of fun, actually.
Just remember, as a general rule, that it's that structure all the way down, because if you change the logic you're using, like you use like many value logic, you don't have the law of excluded middle anymore. So then everything else downstream from that changes.
I see. Yeah, yeah, that's something that like all of those what do you call it? I was looking at formal fallacies, and there's like, there's ones that I kind of remember, and then there's ones that I really don't at all. So that's going to be like new information for me. And when you said excluded middle, that's different from undistributed middle?
Yeah, the law of excluded middle is just, it has to be true or false. It might be another name for it. I've never actually heard that term before.
Okay, let me look.
I mean, that sounds like it's a different kind of logic, because there are distributive logics.
I do see something here that says law of excluded middle. It says not to be confused with the fallacy of excluded middle. In logic, the law of excluded middle, or the principle of excluded middle, states that for every proposition, either this proposition or its negation is true.
Yeah.
It is one of the so-called three laws of thought, along with the law of non-contradiction and the law of identity. However, no system of logic is built on just these laws, and none of these laws provide inference rules, such as modus ponens or De Morgan's laws, which I'm not at all familiar with.
Yeah, I mean, there's intermediate steps between those 3 points I got you, but you usually don't. Like, the way I laid it out would be the way I would teach the basic thing to someone.
Okay. No, I appreciate all the input, because everyone, I don't know how many people that this information is brand new for, and it's a lot of it is brand new for me, because the information that I got initially was like 12 years ago, 13 years ago, and I just looked at it every now and then, but didn't really have anyone to talk to about it. I always meant to like go through my textbook and just kind of refresh my memory, but then I never did. So this is kind of like that. I'm doing that now. So so I'm relearning all this stuff, and every little bit of input that's constructive, definitely helps. So I welcome it. So let's see. I guess we could go on to, do we want to wait for Richard to come back to keep going? Do you think?
It's up to you, because I was going to come in here and just
chill out.
Comment. I didn't know we were going to read, because I'm actually doing work for my class tomorrow.
Oh, you are? Okay. Okay, because we actually went through all the way through like page 12 last night. They had started before I got there, but I think he and Von Erich went through this first portion before I got there, and then we picked it up together. So I don't think he'll mind if maybe, let's see. I'll just go to that last statements versus propositions part. Okay, so deductive logic versus inductive logic. Let us go back to the two arguments from the previous section. There is smoke, therefore there is fire. That's A1. A2 is there were 20 people originally, there are 19 persons currently, therefore someone is missing. There's an important difference between these two inferences, which corresponds to a division of logic into two branches. On one hand, we know that the existence of smoke does not ensure the existence of fire. It only makes the existence of fire likely or probable. Thus, although inferring fire on the basis of smoke is reasonable, it is nevertheless fallible insofar as it is possible for there to be smoke without being fire. We may be wrong in asserting that there is a fire. And you know, I pointed out last night that this could have changed a little bit to a different result if they had added one thing in here. If there is smoke, then there is fire, and then there is smoke, therefore there is fire. Then it would be that the conclusion absolutely followed. However, just being that there is smoke, we can't assume there's fire, just like they say here. Okay. The investigation of inferences of this sort is traditionally called inductive logic. Inductive logic investigates the process of drawing probable, likely, plausible, through fallible conclusions from premises. Another way of stating this, inductive logic investigates arguments in which the truth of the premises makes likely the truth of the conclusion. Inductive logic is a very difficult and intricate subject, partly because the practitioners, experts of this discipline, are not in complete agreement concerning what constitutes correct inductive reasoning. Inductive logic is not the subject of this book. If you want to learn about inductive logic, it is probably best to take a course on probability and statistics. Inductive reasoning is often called statistical or probabilistic reasoning and forms the basis of experimental science. Inductive reasoning is important to science, but so is deductive reasoning, which is the subject of this book. Consider argument A2 above. In this argument, if the premises are in fact true, then the conclusion is certainly also true. Let's roll up to make sure we can see that. There's A2 right there. Still another way of stating things. The truth of the premises necessitates the truth of the conclusion. The investigation of these sorts of arguments is called deductive logic. The following should be noted. Suppose that you have an argument and suppose that the truth of the premises necessitates, guarantees, the truth of the conclusion. Then it follows, logically, that the truth of the premises makes likely the truth of the conclusion. In other words, if an argument is judged to be deductively correct, then it is also judged to be inductively correct as well. The converse is not true. Not every inductively correct argument is also deductively correct. The smoke-fire argument is an example of an inductively correct argument that is not deductively correct. For whereas the existence of smoke makes likely the existence of fire, it does not guarantee the existence of fire. In deductive logic, the task is to distinguish deductively correct arguments from deductively incorrect arguments. Nevertheless, we should keep in mind that, although an argument may be judged to be deductively incorrect, it may still be reasonable, that is, it may still be inductively correct. Some arguments are not inductively correct and therefore are not deductively correct either. They are just plain unreasonable. Suppose you flunk intro logic, and suppose that on the basis of this, you conclude that it will be a breeze to get into law school. Under these circumstances, it seems that your reasoning is faulty.
Pause.
Yeah.
So I'd like to engage the side chat, and if they can come up with examples of these kinds of things, so that we have some interaction in the side chat. And aside from that, I think the more minds that are working on this, the better the variety of explanations, and the more minds will grasp it. So guys in the side chat, if you can come up with examples of these things, they will be posted as you post them. And I'd appreciate it if you would.
Okay, so do we have any comments or anything about these two forms of logic and how they differ?
I would say that's a pretty good summary.
Yeah, I like the way this thing is written. I really do. I think it's super clear.
I think it is too. But wanted to check before we move forward. Let's see, how long is this section? It's pretty short. Would you like to read, either one of you?
Yeah, and I'd also like to know, since you have two things to compare, because you can't compare one thing, how's my volume compared to Cerberus? Because I've already adjusted his.
Yours sounds great. I haven't heard him in a little while, so I'm not sure how it compares.
Right. Sound good? Is that good?
Good.
I've got you two equalized. If he and I are equalized according to Housey, and then according to Cerberus, me and Housey are equalized, then we're obviously good.
Okay. Yeah, sounds good. Good.
I would read.
Okay. Before you start, just so that I know, when you get down to, like, say where it's the difference, right? Last paragraph, is that the time in which I should roll up, or do you like to finish the entire page all the way down to the bottom before I move it?
Could I just ask you to scroll?
Sure.
Okay. I'll just say
just
scroll.
Scroll, and I'll scroll.
I'm going to say please, if that's all right.
That's fine too.
Okay. Mama will roll over in her grave, man. I'm telling you. Statements versus propositions. Henceforth, by logic, I mean deductive logic. Logic investigates inferences in terms of the arguments that represent them. Recall that an argument is a collection of statements, declarative statements, one of which is designated as the conclusion, and the remainder of which are designated as the premises. Also recall that usually in an argument, the premises are offered to support or justify the conclusions. Statements and sentences in general are linguistic objects like words. They consist of strings or sentences, of sounds, that is to say, spoken language, or strings of symbols, written language. Statements must be carefully distinguished from the propositions. They express or assert when they are uttered. Intuitively, statements stand in the same relation to propositions as nouns stand to the objects they denote. Just as the word water denotes a substance that is liquid under normal circumstances, the sentence or statement, water is wet, denotes the proposition that water is wet. Equivalently, the sentence denotes the state of affairs, the wetness of water. Scroll, please. The differences between the five-letter word water in English and the liquid substance it denotes should be obvious enough, and no one is apt to confuse the word and the substance. Whereas water consists of letters, that is, the word water consists of letters, water consists of molecules. The distinction between a statement and the proposition it expresses is very much like the distinction between the word water and the substance water. There is another difference between statements and propositions, whereas statements are always part of a particular language. In this example, English. What does EG stand for? Anyone? Okay, never mind. Propositions are not peculiar. Did you have an answer to that, Cerberus? EG, what it literally stands for?
It's a Latin phrase. I don't remember how to pronounce it, but it means example. For like as an example.
Well, I knew that.
Oh, it's like exemplary something.
Okay, so we don't know. Moving on. Propositions are not peculiar to any particular language in which they might be expressed. Thus, for example, the following are different statements in different languages, yet they all express the same proposition, namely the whiteness of snow. Scroll, please. We will see the example at the top. In English, snow is white. In German, very poorly pronounced by Richard Madsen, der Schnee ist weiß. In French, I think, la neige est blanche. In this case, quite clearly, different sentences may be used to express the same proposition. The opposite can also happen. The same sentence may be used in different contexts or under different circumstances to express different propositions, to denote different states of affairs. For example, the statement, I am hungry, expresses a different proposition for each person who utters it, because everyone's experience of hunger is different. When I utter it, the proposition expressed pertains to my stomach. Not actually. When you utter it, the proposition pertains to your stomach. When the president utters it, the proposition pertains to his or her stomach. Have we had a female president? I don't think so. Not yet. But anyway, not yet, but maybe. Okay. Maybe someday. So actually, this is not true. It's not the condition of the stomach. It's actually a condition of the brain sensing the stomach.
Right, or the sensation of hunger, or the actual position of being hungry. You know, having an empty stomach.
Right, which I still would argue is all things the brain understands and the stomach doesn't understand or experience any of it.
Right, right. Okay.
5. If someone wants 5.
Yeah, I think we lost Sir, but that's okay. Okay, so oh wait, let's see how long is this.
To answer to Nerdy Rodent, I'm an ignorant American, and I'm only aware of what goes on in the United States proper and nowhere else on the planet, basically. And yes, there are presidents in other nations who may or may not be female, already have been, but I'm unaware of them.
Yeah. And, you know, we could also consider that when we say president, somehow we automatically went to the president of the nation instead of a company or something like that. You know, president is a lot of different positions and a lot of different places. So. Okay, so form versus content. Although propositions or the meanings of statements are always lurking behind the scenes, logic is primarily concerned with statements. The reason is that statements are in some sense easier to point at, easier to work with. For example, we can write a statement on the blackboard and examine it. By contrast, since they are essentially abstract in nature, propositions cannot be brought into the classroom or anywhere. Propositions are unwieldy and uncooperative. What is worse, no one quite knows exactly what they are. There's another important reason for concentrating on statements rather than propositions. Logic analyzes and classifies arguments according to their form as opposed to their content. This distinction will be explained later. Whereas the form of a statement is fairly easily understood, the form of a proposition is not so easily understood. Whereas it is easy to say what a statement consists of, it is not so easy to say what a proposition consists of. A statement consists of words arranged in a particular order. Thus, the form of a statement may be analyzed in terms of the arrangement of its constituent words. To be more precise, a statement consists of terms, which include simple terms and compound terms. A simple term is just a single word together with a specific grammatical role, being a noun or being a verb, etc. A compound term is a string of words that act as a grammatical unit within statements. Examples of compound terms include noun phrases such as the President of the U.S. and predicate phrases such as is a Democrat. For the purposes of logic, terms divide into two important categories, descriptive terms and logical terms. One must carefully note, however, that this distinction is not absolute. Rather, the distinction between descriptive and logical terms depends upon the level, depth of logical analysis we are pursuing.
Pause,
Let us
please.
pursue. Mm-hmm.
They use the word predicate, and I don't think that's a common term. And I think that a lot of people might be confused by the term predicated. That is to say, it's dependent on another thing.
This needs to apply to something, is what you're saying.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is a noun phrase.
Like it makes no sense to say is a Democrat unless it's referring to someone, or I suppose only someone who is a Democrat.
Right, right. Well, I mean, in the earliest days of my education in English, I remember we had to divide sentences into subject and predicate, and this in the I guess the president would be the subject because of the United States is descriptive, and is a Democrat because is a thing that they're doing, right? It's a state of being, is a Democrat. That's the predicate. So, but yeah, you're right. Predicate phrases. I think that maybe we'll get used to that if they keep using that to describe certain things. I know that there's. I
wouldn't have brought it up. I know that's going to come up later in logic, though.
It will, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so should I go on? I'm not sure where we were. I think we're just on the end of that first paragraph, right?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, let us pursue an analogy for a moment. Recall, first of all, that the core meaning of the word analyze is to break down a complex whole to its constituent parts. In physics, matter can be broken down or analyzed at different levels. It can be analyzed into molecules, into atoms, into elementary particles, electrons, protons, etc. Still deeper levels of analysis are available, e.g. quarks. Oh, and I've put the definition for EG in the side chat there.
Yeah, Beck also fetched that for us. Thank you, Beck.
Okay, cool. The basic idea in breaking down matter is that in order to go deeper and deeper, one needs ever increasing amounts of energy, and one needs ever increasing sophistication. The same may be said about logic and the analysis of language. There are many levels at which we can analyze language, and the deeper levels require more logical sophistication than the shallower levels. They also require more energy on the part of the logician. In the present text, more brain power. Yeah, I think harder. In the present text, we consider three different levels of logical analysis. Each of those levels is given a name: syllogistic logic, sentential logic, and predicate logic. Whereas syllogistic logic and sentential logic represent relatively superficial, shallow levels of logical analysis, predicate logic represents a relatively deep level of analysis. Deeper levels of analysis are available.
I want to like find a way to paraphrase everything there because that seemed highly complex.
Yeah, I put most of that in a set of notes that I've been keeping on the side that I've just been grabbing stuff and putting into. And what I might actually do is when I have those notes complete, because I'm kind of still working on them, I will put, if you want, the link to the shared document in the description of the video.
That would be lovely.
So that everyone can have access to them and they can save their own copy and modify them if they want to. Okay, so I think we were here. Each level of analysis, syllogistic logic, sentential logic, and predicate logic, has associated with it a special class of logical terms. All in the case of syllogistic logic. In the case of syllogistic logic, the logical terms include only the following: all, some, no, not, or is, are, and I think also probably none would be in that as well. But I guess no is their version of having that in there. In the case of sentential logic,
looks like it. Sorry.
Yeah, it does. In the case of sentential logic, the logical terms include only sentential connectives and, or, if, then, or only if. In the case of predicate logic, the logical terms include the logical terms of both syllogistic logic and sentential logic. As noted earlier, logic analyzes and classifies arguments according to their form. The logical form of an argument is a function of the forms of the individual statements that constitute the argument. The logical form of a statement, in turn, is a function of the arrangement of its terms, where logical terms are regarded as more important than the descriptive ones. Whereas the logical terms have to do with the form of a statement, the descriptive terms have to do with its content. Note, however, that since the distinction between logical terms and descriptive terms is relative to the particular level of analysis we are pursuing, the notion of logical form is likewise relative in this way. In particular, for each of the different logics listed above, there is a corresponding notion of logical form. The distinction between form and content is difficult to understand in the abstract. It is best to consider some actual examples. In a later section, we will examine this distinction in the context of syllogistic logic. As soon as we can get a clear idea about form and content, then we can discuss how to classify arguments into those that are deductively correct and those that are not not deductively correct. Did I say inductively in that last sentence?
Yes, you had, but yeah. But now
okay.
You've corrected it now. It's fine.
Okay. I need about 2 minutes to do something real quick.
All right, then take them.
Are you okay with just I don't know, pausing for a sec?
Or maybe I won't. We'll find out.
Okay, I'll be back.
See, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go down to let's see, where are we at there? Page 9 on the same PDF over on my screen and share it so that I can continue while Housey is busy. It'll take just how do I waste enough time that you can be entertained while I do that? By rambling on. Preliminary definitions. In the present section, we examine some of the basic ideas in logic, which will be made considerably clearer in subsequent chapters. As we saw in the previous section, there is a distinction in logic between form and content. There is likewise a distinction in logic between arguments that are good in form and arguments that are good in content. This distinction is best understood by way of an example or two. So please consider the following arguments. All cats are dogs. All dogs are reptiles. Therefore, all cats are reptiles. Let's go over that as A1 right there. If it were true that all cats are dogs and all dogs are reptiles, then it would follow, therefore, all cats are reptiles. Try to think of this, or I like to think of this, as dogs is the largest grouping. So within dogs is cats. And because the largest grouping dogs are all reptiles and cats are within the category dogs, which are reptiles, then all the cats in that category, the subcategory, are indeed then reptiles. Does Side Chat have any questions or need further clarity on that? Or have suggestions about it? A2. All cats are vertebrates. All mammals are vertebrates. Therefore, all cats are mammals. Now, bear in mind, we're not looking at the truth value of these, but we're just seeing if they're good in form. So if we accept that all cats are vertebrates and that all mammals are vertebrates, therefore all cats are mammals. Let me see if I can get that. So the largest group here is vertebrates, which contains cats. And then all mammals are vertebrates. So mammals is a subcategory of vertebrates. Therefore, all cats are mammals. Now, if I'm reading this correctly, we could have the largest category, vertebrates, which contains cats, and which would also contain mammals. But it's not necessarily true that they are overlapping or the same category. So it's not necessarily true that it would follow that all cats are indeed mammals, if I'm doing this right. And Halsey has pre-made Venn diagrams of these two examples. And we should check with Halsey when Halsey gets back. And I just saw Cerberus Hex flash in and out. Oh, and here are Halsey's Venn diagram for the same.
That's the one. It's pretty much the same argument as A2.
Right.
Actually, let's see. All cats are dogs. Okay, so A1 is valid but unsound, right? Because it's not true on the bottom there. Well,
it's not true, but
not true.
But the form is good.
Right, and A2 is invalid and unsound, but with all correct premises and conclusion, which is always fun. But yeah, just like you were describing, you know, the larger circle represents vertebrates.
That was vertebrates.
Right? And here's cats, and here's mammals.
Mammals. Yeah.
But we don't know the relationship between these two, not from the premises anyway.
Right. Welcome, Kev, Stupid Monkey Philosophy. Okay, so then continuing on with this. Neither of these arguments... Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. I'll let you control it until you want me to read.
I found a typo. My brain hates inconsistency. I mean, really hates it. This reads, neither of these arguments is good. That's bad. But they are bad for different reasons. Yes, it should, because it's more than one thing that should read are good. But they are bad for different reasons. Consider first their content. Whereas all statements in A1 are false, all the statements in A2 are true. Since the premises in A1 are not all true, this is not a good argument as far as content goes. Whereas A2 is not a good argument as far as... Why does it say whereas and then the same thing? Does it say the same thing twice, or is that my brain?
Okay, so since the premises of A1 are not all true, this is not a good argument as far as content goes, whereas A2 is a good argument as far as content goes.
Is a good argument as far as content goes. Yeah. Sorry.
It's all right.
I had a temporary human moment there.
Only
I hope that goes
human.
Away soon. Well, it got better. Now consider their forms. This will be explained more fully in a later section. The question is this: do the premises support the conclusion? Does the conclusion follow from the premises? In the case of A1, the premises do, in fact, support the conclusion. The conclusion does, in fact, follow from the premises, although the premises are not true. If they were true, then the conclusion would also be true by necessity. I don't like the word of necessity there. In the case of A2, the premises are all true, and so is the conclusion. But nevertheless, the truth of the conclusion is not conclusively supported by the premises. In A2, the conclusion does not follow from the premises. To see that the conclusion does not follow from the premises, we need merely substitute the term reptiles for mammals. Then the premises are both true, but the conclusion is false. And if you wanted to do that in the Venn diagram, do you have the Venn diagram labeled?
Sure. I could probably do that real quick. Okay, so we are going with which one again?
Same Venn diagram with a large circle, two smaller circles inside, because we're still on vertebrate cat mammal.
Okay. Hold on. I think I actually had one of these little cool Venn diagram programs up that is a little bit more efficient than my thing. So let me share
Well, feel
that.
free to use it then. Be all fancy.
Yeah. Yes, yes. Where is it? Here. Okay, so we're going for the A2 argument.
Yes.
Are we substituting anything?
Yes, well, we're going to do it in original form, and then we're going to do a substitution and show why that shows that this is false.
Okay, so is this different though from the one that I had up just a minute ago? With
in structure of the Venn diagram, no, it's not. It's not different.
Okay.
So those circles need to not overlap, right?
Right. And we need to substitute cats, right? And let's see, all cats are vertebrates, mammals. We got mammals over here. Just scoot this over. Or I guess we could just put C and M, but oh, come on
C,
now.
V, and M should be fine.
I'm not sure why this is giving me a problem here.
Why not?
Because it can.
Have you not heard of Murphy's Law?
All right, so, and then we've got vertebrates up here. All right, so all cats are vertebrates, all mammals are vertebrates. We can't say that all cats are mammals because you know what would we need for that to happen visually for all cats to be mammals?
We would need cats inside the category mammals.
Completely inside of it, right?
Yes.
And that that was not indicated by the premises. Correct.
And so or you said that well. I should say you said that well instead of correct.
You talk good. But how am I going to add text to this? Because it said text, and I'm like, where is it? Oh, here we go. Okay. So I'll just throw this over here. I'll CRV. And now what are we substituting?
We are to substitute two of them in the the large circle and one of the smaller circles because it's claiming all these things are interchangeable, and that shows that they are not interchangeable. So perhaps if cat were the largest category and vertebrates were a category within cats, for instance.
Are we looking at like this, where it says in the case of A2, the premises are all true and so is the conclusion, but nevertheless, the truth of the conclusion is not conclusively supported. To see that the conclusion does not follow from the premises, we need merely substitute the term reptiles for mammals. Then the premises are both true, but the conclusion is false. So reptiles for mammals. So we just go with R over here. You know, I don't know why it just doesn't let me get to the text. Oh, come on now. If it's underneath something. So reptiles, whoops. Reptiles.
Perhaps it's the order in which you put them there.
Maybe.
Peace and respect, Clockwork. Welcome.
Send backwards. Okay.
Peace and respect, Richard.
Howdy, Clockwork.
I hope you can't hear my coffee maker going in the background because it's kind of loud. But
it's not troublesome. It's fine.
It's almost done. It's almost done.
Whoops. Not bullet points. Not
I love the idea of a coffee maker. I love the idea of coffee. I love the smell of coffee, and I love drinking coffee. So I'm right there with you, man. It's okay.
Well, I wish I had my great-grandfather's percolator.
What kind of percolator did he have?
It was silver, and you could see it percolating in the little top there.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah. But these new ones are just that crap.
Okay, my mom had one, and my next eldest brother ended up with it. It was about 2 quarts in the bottom carafe. And it had a rubber seal where another section equally big was on top of that. And it had a one-way valve in the or a resistance valve in the bottom of the upper chamber, which was open to the air. It wasn't sealed. And so you put whatever amount of coffee to your taste, whatever amount of water to taste, and boiled it on the stove. And the steam building up in the bottom section forced the water into the upper section slowly. And then when you took it off the burner, the vacuum would pull it back down through the grounds, simultaneously filtering out the grounds. Is that the exact style you're talking about, or something different?
Oh, yours is a lot fancier. Well, that one's a lot fancier than the one my great-grandfather had. I'm just saying.
Your grandpa had a pour-over style, yeah?
Pretty much, yeah.
Where you heat up the water and pour it in there? Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So, so does this look right to you? Do we need to actually put reptiles in there for it to be have the right impact?
Where's the smiley face?
The smiley face?
He's looking down, and you can't see past the bridge of his nose. His mouth is under his chin by your perspective right now because the eyeballs are too low. How's that for an explanation?
I'll add that. Fair enough.
Ah.
Totally made that crap up. Are we doing reptiles? Because I thought we were doing A2. Did you want to do A1 first? All cats are dogs. All dogs are reptiles. Therefore, all cats are reptiles. Or did you want to do A2? All cats are vertebrates. All mammals are vertebrates. Therefore, all cats are mammals. Because I think the experiment...
They suggested substituting reptiles for mammals.
Mm-hmm.
And so I did that. I can do a different one, or I could... all cats are dogs. All dogs are reptiles. Therefore, isn't it? It's almost the same argument, isn't it? All cats are dogs.
Well, one follows, and the other one doesn't even follow. and
Therefore,
of course,
all cats are reptiles. All cats are dogs. If all cats are dogs and all dogs are reptiles, then all cats. Yeah, so that's just like all ARB, all BRC, therefore all ARC. That's the same kind of argument as that, right?
Right.
Yeah. I won't represent that visually here because I don't think it's really necessary. But well, actually, I guess I could.
Yeah, you just make concentric circles, and then you're good. That's it.
Yeah, right. Let's see.
And for people who are visual,
what the hell?
All dogs.
She's cruel like that.
Are dogs.
But she's only cruel like that to cats which are dogs.
Fair enough. Okay, I get it.
You know, don't worry too much.
Are reptiles. All cats are dogs, and that's so that means that cats is inside of dogs.
Sure.
So this is dogs and this is cats. And so what we have here is another circle that actually ends up being bigger than dogs, right? Because all
so the
dogs
largest category should be reptiles, then dogs, then cats within that, according to this,
so
as far as I can understand.
Hey, you left out fish. I'm just saying.
Yes. All fish which are indeed elephants or pachyderms. All fish are pachyderms.
Oh, I could say something about elephants, but that would take us back to the last stream we were all on. So never mind.
Gonna let that one go. Okay.
I'm gonna let that one go for right now.
See, she couldn't stand it. She had to ask what it was.
I'm one of those people. Yeah.
Got to solve the mystery. I got it.
Well, it was the whole morality. It was the whole morality stream, and I was like,
like, do animals have morals or something like that, or?
Yeah, elephants have morals. Did you not know that?
No, they absolutely do.
They absolutely do.
Yeah,
they mourn their dead and care for their young.
Yeah, I mean,
I'll just let that lay there.
I would say that there's I don't know all of the different animals that do those things, but I know that it's probably more than we know about or expect.
Oh yeah. I've seen video of elephants mourning their dead.
I mean,
I mean, the elephant could be like 900 years old or whatever, but yeah, they still mourn it.
I saw a crazy video of I think it was a lioness who had just sort of overtaken a wildebeest that had just given birth, like fresh out of the bag birth, right? Still wet on the floor. And the mom had to run away, right, to save her own life. And the baby was, flailing around in the dirt, freshly born. The lioness, was all set to have some lunch. And instead of eating the thing, she laid down and started like snuffling it and licking it and like grooming it as if it were like her own baby. And she actually allowed it to return to the mother.
How do you like them apples?
I think that probably one of the things that affected that situation was possibly like just the smell of like new birth, the chemicals that go along with that, and the taste of possibly like the whatever, the placenta, the fluids that come with the bag and all that other stuff, and it just set off the maternal instinct, and it let that one slide. So
yeah, you're gonna have trouble justifying that without morals in a strict paradigm of evolution. Okay, so Odin had an interesting observation. He's aware of an animal that does have morals. Humans. Because humans are animals.
We certainly are. It's my sincere belief that we need to enhance our animal knowledge of ourselves and learn how to be good human animals before we can be, better
good
human
stewards.
beings. Yeah, just better humans in general, better earthlings.
Yeah.
So, and this is part of that process, learning logic. So there. Okay, so here's A2 and A1. We got them here all diagrammed out. Is this right? Is A1 right?
A1 is fine.
Okay. All right, so we can go back to, I guess, the text. All right. So we went all the way down to this. All of this is meant to be at an intuitive level. The details will be presented later. For the moment, however, we give some rough definitions to help us get started in understanding the ways of classifying various arguments. In examining an argument, there are basically two questions one should ask. Now, I like to ask these in reverse, just like they presented the other information sort of in the wrong order. I think they present these in the wrong order. I always go with this first before I go with this. So,
and why do you do that?
I guess because right now they're only talking about deductive logic, and I always look for validity before I look for anything else.
And why do you do that?
Because if an argument is not valid, it's automatically going to be unsound, and there's no reason to go further with it if it's not valid. You can look at why it's not valid, and you can wonder, you can maybe try to fill in the blanks that would complete the information and make it valid. But, as it is, that's how you kind of have to take it as it is. So, I
attack it that way myself because I'm lazy. And it's easier. It's just easier and faster to see if the conclusion follows from the premises than it is to evaluate the truth values of the premises. That's just more work to me.
Yeah. You do it in this order that they've got it, or in the order that
I do it in the opposite order, as you said, because of laziness and convenience.
Yeah, maybe I'm lazy. I mean, I probably am too.
And it's just faster.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I mean, for some arguments, I might have to go and look something up to see if the premise is true. To look at just the structure of it and see if something necessarily follows, I can do that intuitively.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. The classification of a given argument is based on the answers to these two questions. In particular, we have the following definitions. An argument is factually correct if and only if all of its premises are true. An argument is valid if and only if its conclusion follows from its premises. An argument is sound if and only if it is both factually correct and valid. Basically, a factually correct argument has good content, and a valid argument has good form. A sound argument, tongue-tied. A sound argument has both good content and good form.
I know that you're looking at another screen, but that last thing you read there was actually behind our pictures on StreamYard, just so you're aware of that.
Oh, okay. Let me put it up on top then. Okay, so basically a factually correct argument has good content, and a valid argument has good form, and a sound argument has both good content and good form. Note that a factually correct argument may have a false conclusion. The definition only refers to the premises. Whether an argument is valid.
So if we say that an argument is sound, we're agreeing that it's true in reality.
Well, we're acknowledging already that it definitely is valid if it's sound, right? Because it has to be valid to be sound.
One of the qualifiers for sound is valid. So valid is a subcategory, and sound is the larger category.
Yes, that involves actual factual things. Yeah.
And if an argument is sound, it must be true, whether you like it or not.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Let's see here. Whether an argument is valid is sometimes difficult to decide. Sometimes it's hard to know whether or not the conclusion follows from the premises. Part of the problem has to do with knowing what follows from means. In studying logic, we are attempting to understand the meaning of follows from. More importantly, perhaps, we're attempting to learn how to distinguish between valid and invalid arguments. Although logic can teach us something about validity and invalidity, it can teach us very little about factual correctness. The question of the truth or falsity of individual statements is primarily the subject matter of the sciences, broadly construed. As a rough and ready definition of validity, the following is offered. An argument is valid if and only if it is impossible for the conclusion to be false while all the premises are true. An alternative definition, which is the one I like, might be helpful in understanding validity. To say that an argument is valid is to say that if the premises were true, that the conclusion would necessarily also be true.
I like that one. I think that one's easier, clearer.
Yeah, it is. The other one's a little bit twisty, and this one sinks in better for me. Okay, basic concepts. Actually, that's just the header. In all of this, they're saying these will become clearer as you read further and as you study particular examples.
Yes. And to answer directly to Nerdy Rodent, what does it mean for something to be true? Right now, in my opinion, what I would say is true is that which we can best justify. That's what I consider to be true. So my assertion that a thing is true may be evolving over time, or at least I hope to evolve over time.
Yeah. I sometimes run into people that have an issue with calling anything true because it's their belief that because they didn't witness something firsthand, or they don't have firsthand knowledge of something, that they don't know it's true and they can't confirm it. And so it's hard for them to, invest in this idea that this thing is actually true. But to me, when I hear that kind of that kind of process, I guess, described, it makes me think that must be exhausting to suspect every little bit of information as possibly not true. I think it's good to have healthy skepticism. However, I think that we do need to trust information. I would say always leave a sliver of an alternative possibility available, that this is true as far as we know it. It could possibly change, or it could be different than we think it is. But for the moment, this is what we know, and this is what we'll trust until something overtly changes this and shows that it isn't true. That's my thing.
I do not believe people when they say that they're solipsists, nor when they say they must experience a thing, which I don't know what to label that truth theory. Do you have a label for that I could use?
I don't know, but I have seen it a lot. And what's funny about that is that I've seen it come up in mostly in people who also believe a lot of things that they definitely don't have firsthand knowledge of and could not.
Right. That's my point.
Ever have firsthand knowledge.
Yeah, they don't live their lives that way. You can't live your life that way. It would be saying something like, I believe my engine in my car doesn't need oil.
Right.
Unless I check it and it's low. It could never need oil unless I check. You do not live your life that way. There's no way.
Yeah. I think that when people maybe have discussions about truth and facts and all that stuff, I think that they might have a lot to say about it. But in reality, if they get cut on their arm and they get a bad infection, unless they have some home remedy that they always try to use, they're probably going to go to the doctor. They probably are going to just accept that the doctor gives them a prescription for antibiotics, and they're probably going to follow the directions of the doctor and not say, hey, are you really saying what, the truth is? And how can I trust these antibiotics? I don't know what's in them. It's probably not going to be that kind of situation. They're going to trust, and they're going to do what a lot of people do and try their best, to see what truth is and to trust what truth is. And I think that all this other idea about, we don't know about facts and this, that, and the other, I think that mostly it has to do with news and politics more than anything else. And it's unfortunate that right now, in some cases, we have to argue about the very fabric of reality in order to have a conversation about something.
Yeah, that's just ridiculous.
Yeah, it's exhausting. And it seems to be like, even when you get to an agreement point with some people about what that reality is, it's even hard to go forward from there,
So I'm curious, Halsey, can you graciously accept a compliment from Kevin, who wrote, OMG, almost passed out on the bus just now. I'm pooped. Or maybe it's just Halsey's soothing voice.
I could talk slower and softer and put you to sleep.
No, I just want a nice warm pillow. Thank you so much for that.
Okay, so we are almost at the place where we left off with Von Erich.
Yes.
We're at the number 7 here, and I think we're at the very last part of number 7 where we left off. But we can dive into this if you want. Are you into reading any of this?
I think we should go ahead and wrap this up because we're approaching an hour and a half, and I want to keep these in digestible bites.
That's a good idea.
I would make a note. I have made a note of 7.
Okay.
Chapter 7. And
Cool.
I would like to pick it back up again there next show.
Okay.
I don't know how often we're going to be able to do these shows, but upon availability, dependent upon Space Cadet is, I think, the way that I'm going to meter that.
Sure.
So, Space Cadet, do you know of days where you could do this?
Okay, so if it's always going to be at night and it's always going to be around this time, almost any day. Tuesdays are probably one day where I might be, more tired from that day's activities. So, almost any other day.
So not Tuesday.
Not
That's
Tuesday.
Not Tuesday is the first premise.
Yes.
So negate T.
Yes.
Is the first premise. Are there any other premises?
Well, given, okay, so we have to like maybe give somehow the all of the days of the week as a positive, but not Tuesday. So I don't know if we have to just assume all of those other days or if we have to notate them.
Okay, so plus F is equivalent to not T. Is plus F a good answer?
Plus F? What does F designate? Or
where T is Tuesday. F is,
well, I guess I mean F could be Friday, but it could be something else too.
It's the only day of the week that I'm aware of that starts with the letter F in our language.
True. I was thinking about something that could kind of say, okay, the entire week. So like if week, then not Tuesday.
Ooh, if W not T.
W little arrow and then not T.
Okay. So
right.
You want to try for tomorrow night and see if that happens?
Tomorrow is Friday, sure.
Okay, great, guys. We're going to try to pick this back up on Friday. Thank you for special guest Clockwork Rex, who has just a gorgeous radio announcer voice. The additions that Cerberus Hex made in sharing some of his experience with us, and of course, to I suppose co-host, if you'll accept that title, Space Cadet and or Halcyonic Kaiju. Why those names are so different, I have no idea. But we're going to try to pick this up. What do you mean it is Friday? Oh, Nerdy is across the globe and said, but it is Friday. Yes, yes. Oh. Come on, man.
And you know what? Let me put, if I will put all of this this into all of the chats. This is the document that we're working off of. If any of you would like to explore it on your own, coming up to the next class, reviewing any part of it. There it is.
And we'll pick this back up in about 22 and a half hours. How's that?
Woo-hoo!
You want me to be specific, Nerdy? On Friday, April the 7th, in about 22 and a half hours. Thanks a lot, everybody.
Set your timers.
Set your timers for 22 and a half hours and be back here, and we'll do another one. Thank you so much, Halcyonic. Really appreciate it. And you do have a lovely reading voice there, by the way.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. It's a nice thing to say.
All right. Well,
sleep well, everyone, if you do.
I think I can show that is a true thing, that you have a lovely reading voice. It's not an actual opinion. All right. So next time, guys, till then, we'll catch you next show. Thanks a lot for coming by. I hope you love the series.